My name is Dorothy Richardson, but everyone calls me Dot. I'm 78 years old, and I've lived long enough to know that family is supposed to be everything. That's what Mama taught me. That's what I taught my children. But on July 15th of this year, I learned that sometimes the people you love the most can break your heart in ways you never imagined. Let me start with the day that changed everything. I woke up that Saturday morning with excitement bubbling in my chest like a young girl on Christmas. It was my birthday, my 78th, and I had planned a small party at my house for the family. Nothing fancy, just the way I like it. I made my famous 7-layer chocolate cake the night before, the one with the secret ingredient I learned from my grandmother. I bought chicken to fry, potato salad to make, and all the fixings for a real family meal. My house might be small, but it's paid for, and it's mine. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, in the same neighborhood where I raised my children. The wallpaper might be old and the carpet might be worn, but it's filled with love and memories. On the mantel above my fireplace sit photographs of my late husband Bernard, my son Marcus, my grandchildren Aaliyah and Isaiah, and yes, even my daughter-in-law Candace, though looking at her picture that morning gave me a strange feeling I couldn't quite name. I had sent out the invitations 3 weeks prior, just simple cards I bought from the dollar store with handwritten notes inside. Please come celebrate Grandma Dot's 78th birthday, Saturday, July 15th, 2:00 p.m. Food, cake, and love. Don't forget to bring your appetite. I had called everyone too, just to make sure. Marcus said they'd be there. Candace said she wouldn't miss it. The grandkids promised to come. I even invited my neighbor Loretta, who's been my friend for 30 years, and a few ladies from my church. Pastor Williams said he'd try to stop by after his afternoon visit to the hospital. That morning, I got up at 6 a.m. even though the party wasn't until 2. I wanted everything perfect. I fried that chicken until it was golden brown and crispy. I made my potato salad with extra pickles the way the grandkids like it. I baked mac and cheese that came out bubbly and perfect. I made sweet tea in my big pitcher and lemonade for the kids. I set out my good plates, the ones with the pink flowers that Bernard bought me for our 20th anniversary. By noon, I was decorating. I hung streamers from the ceiling and put balloons in every corner. I set up folding chairs in the living room because my regular furniture wouldn't seat everyone. I put on my best purple dress, the one I wear to church on Easter, and my pearl necklace that Bernard gave me on our last anniversary before he passed. I looked at myself in the mirror and smiled. My hair was freshly done from my appointment at Shirley's beauty salon the day before. I had on my good shoes. I looked like somebody's grandmother should look on her birthday. Dignified, presentable, loved. At 1:30, I placed the cake in the center of the dining table. 78 candles. I bought them special. The cake looked beautiful, each layer perfectly stacked. At 1:45, I sat down in my armchair and waited. 2:00 came. Nobody arrived. I told myself they were running late. Black people time, you know. We joke about it at church. I smiled and waited. 2:15. Still nobody. I checked my phone. No messages, no missed calls. 2:30. The chocolate frosting on my cake started to look dull under the afternoon light streaming through the windows. I called Marcus, straight to voicemail. Hey baby, it's Mama. Just wondering if you're on your way. Love you. I called Candace. Voicemail. Hi Candace, it's Mom. Just checking in. See you soon, I hope. I called Aaliyah's cell phone. No answer. By 3:00, something cold and hard settled in my stomach. I called Loretta. She answered on the first ring. Dot, happy birthday, honey. I'm so sorry, I'm stuck at my daughter's house in Birmingham. Her water heater burst and I had to drive down to help. I tried calling you this morning, but it went straight to voicemail. Are you having a good time with the family? They're not here yet, I said, keeping my voice light. But I'm sure they'll be here soon. I'm sure they will, honey. Listen, I'll make it up to you next week. We'll have lunch at that soul food place you like. After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my decorated living room. The balloons seemed to mock me. The streamers hung limply from the ceiling, The food was getting cold. I called the church ladies. Sister Patterson's daughter answered and told me her mother had the flu. Sister Green was at her grandbaby's soccer tournament. She had mentioned it last Sunday, but I'd forgotten. Brother Thomas had a doctor's appointment he couldn't miss. By 3:30, I knew. Deep in my bones, I knew. They weren't coming. None of them. I sat in my armchair, surrounded by balloons and decorations and food that nobody would eat, and I felt something inside me crack. Not break, not yet, but crack, like ice on a frozen pond when the temperature starts to shift. That's when my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Isaiah, my 13-year-old grandson. The message included a photo. My hands trembled as I opened it. The picture showed Marcus, Candace, Aaliyah, and Isaiah standing on what looked like the deck of a cruise ship. They were all smiling, wearing matching white outfits, with the ocean sparkling blue behind them. Candace had on designer sunglasses. Marcus had his arm around her. The kids were throwing up peace signs. The text below the photo said, "Sorry, Grandma, Mom surprised us with a cruise. We're heading to the Bahamas. Wish you were here. Happy birthday!" I stared at that message for a full minute, trying to make sense of it. They were on a cruise. My family was on a cruise. On my birthday, the birthday they had promised to celebrate with me. My fingers moved without thinking. I called Marcus again. This time he answered. "Ma! Hey! Did you get Isaiah's text? Look, I know this is bad timing, but Candace surprised us with this cruise and—" "You're on a cruise?" My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Flat, hollow. "Yeah, Ma, I know. But listen, Candace booked this months ago. It was supposed to be a family bonding trip, and she just told us about it yesterday. The tickets were non-refundable and—" "Months ago?" I interrupted. "She booked a cruise for my birthday. Months ago?" There was a pause. In the background, I could hear steel drum music and people laughing. "Ma, it's not like that. She didn't realize the dates conflicted until—" "I sent the invitations 3 weeks ago, Marcus. I called everyone. You said you'd be here." "I know, Ma, and I feel bad about it. But this cruise cost a lot of money. We couldn't just not go. We'll make it up to you when we get back. We'll take you to dinner somewhere nice. Red Lobster, maybe? You love Red Lobster." Something in me went very cold and very still. "How long have you known about this cruise, Marcus?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Ma, how long?" "Candace told me last week. But Ma, you gotta understand, she'd already paid for everything, and the kids were so excited and—" "Last week." I said it flatly. "You've known for a week that you wouldn't be coming to my birthday. And you didn't tell me." "I was going to tell you, but I didn't want to upset you, and I thought maybe we could move your party to next weekend." "Move my party," I repeated. "Move my 78th birthday party that I've been planning for weeks, that I made a cake for, that I cooked all day for." "Ma, don't be like this. You're making me feel guilty." "Goodbye, Marcus." I hung up before he could respond. Before we continue, please drop a comment if you've ever experienced something like this. We'd love to hear your story, and subscribe to the channel to help us grow. I sat in my living room, surrounded by birthday decorations and enough food to feed 15 people, and I did something I haven't done since Bernard died. I cried. Not the quiet, dignified tears I shed at his funeral. No, these were the kind of tears that come from somewhere deep and painful, the kind that shake your whole body. I cried for the little girl I used to be, who believed family was everything. I cried for the mother I'd been, who raised Marcus to be better than this. I cried for the grandmother whose grandchildren chose a vacation over her. But most of all, I cried for the woman I'd become, 78 years old, sitting alone on her birthday, realizing that she'd been a fool. After I finished crying, I did something that surprised even me. I took out my phone and took a picture of my empty living room with all its decorations, the table full of untouched food, and the cake with 78 unlit candles. I looked at that picture for a long time. Then I called Loretta back. "Dot?" she answered, concern in her voice. "What's wrong?" "I can hear it in your voice." "Nobody came," I said simply. "They're on a cruise. Candace planned it for today." The silence on the other end lasted only a second before Loretta exploded. "She did what? Oh no! Oh no, Dot. That woman, I've been telling you about her for years." "I know," I said quietly. "You were right. I'm coming back. I'm leaving Birmingham right now." "No," I said. "Stay with your daughter. She needs you. I'm fine." "You're not fine. Nobody's fine after something like this." "I will be fine," I corrected. "Eventually." After we hung up, I sat in the growing shadows of my living room as the sun set outside. I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat there, thinking. Candace had planned this. That much was clear. She had booked a cruise for my birthday, deliberately on my birthday, months ago. And she'd kept it secret until the last possible moment. She'd let me plan and cook and decorate and hope, knowing all along that nobody would come. Why? That question burned in my mind. Why would she do this? What had I ever done to her? I thought back over the years. Candace had married Marcus 15 years ago. I'd welcomed her into the family with open arms. I'd babysat Aaliyah and Isaiah whenever they needed me. I'd cooked them Sunday dinners. I'd given them money when times were tight, more than once. I'd never interfered in their marriage, never criticized Candace, never played the difficult mother-in-law. So why? As the room grew darker, I stood up. My knees protested, arthritis, but I made my way to the kitchen and started putting away food. I wrapped up the chicken, covered the potato salad, stored the mac and cheese. Each movement was mechanical, automatic. When I got to the cake, I paused. 78 candles stared up at me, unlit. On impulse, I lit them all, every single one. The flames flickered in the dark kitchen, casting dancing shadows on the walls. I made a wish, not the kind of wish you make on birthday candles when you're young and hopeful. No, this was the kind of wish born from hurt and betrayal. This was the kind of wish that changes things. Then I blew out all 78 candles in one long breath that left me dizzy. The smoke rose in curling patterns, and in that moment, something shifted inside me. The crack I'd felt earlier split wider, but instead of breaking me, it let something new in, something harder, something determined. I cut myself a slice of cake and ate it in the dark alone, while my phone buzzed with messages I didn't read. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. This house where I'd raised Marcus. This house where Bernard and I had built a life. This house that held so many memories. Around 3 a.m. I got up and went to my closet. In the back, behind my winter coats, was a metal filing box. I pulled it out and sat on my bedroom floor, opening it for the first time in years. Inside were papers. Important papers. Papers I'd almost forgotten about. The deed to my house. Life insurance papers from Bernard. My will. The old one I'd made 10 years ago, leaving everything to Marcus. And one more document. One I'd kept secret for over 40 years. I pulled out that last document and read it by the light of my bedside lamp. My hands shook, but not from age, from possibility, from power, because I'd just remembered something very important, something that Candace didn't know, something that Marcus had probably forgotten, something that was going to change everything. I smiled in the darkness of my bedroom. Not a happy smile, not a kind smile, a smile that would have scared me if I'd seen it in a mirror. My phone buzzed again. Another message. I picked it up and looked at the screen. It was from Candace. Finally, she'd decided to reach out. The message read, "Sorry we missed your party. Hope you had a wonderful birthday. We're having such an amazing time. This cruise is exactly what our family needed. Sometimes you have to prioritize the nuclear family, you know? See you in a week." I read that message 3 times. Prioritize the nuclear family. That's when I knew. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a scheduling conflict. This was deliberate. This was Candace sending me a message. "You're not part of the nuclear family. You're just the old lady in the background." I looked down at the document in my lap. The secret document. The one that held more power than Candace could possibly imagine. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I took a photo of the document with my phone, just in case. Because if Candace wanted to play games about who was family and who wasn't, she was about to learn something important. You don't get to be 78 years old without learning a few things about survival, about fighting back, about protecting what's yours. And I was done being the sweet, forgiving grandmother. The next morning, Sunday, dandy, I got dressed in my good church clothes and drove to Mount Zion Baptist Church like I did every Sunday. But this time, I didn't go to pray for forgiveness or peace. I went to talk to Pastor Williams, and after church I made another phone call to a lawyer whose business card had been sitting in my kitchen drawer for 2 years, ever since he'd handled my neighbor's estate. His name was Jerome Mitchell, and his secretary said he could see me Monday morning at 9. I said I'd be there, because Candace thought she'd won. She thought she'd put me in my place. She thought she'd shown me exactly where I stood in the family hierarchy. But what Candace didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that the sweet old lady she'd just humiliated had something worth more than she could imagine. And I was about to show her exactly what happens when you underestimate Dorothy Richardson. Monday morning, I woke up before dawn. My body was tired. I hadn't slept well since the birthday that wasn't, but my mind was sharp and clear in a way it hadn't been in years. I made myself a strong cup of coffee, ate a slice of toast, and put on my navy blue pantsuit, the one I'd worn to Bernard's funeral. It felt appropriate somehow. Jerome Mitchell's law office was in downtown, in one of those old brick buildings that had been renovated but still kept its character. The waiting room had leather chairs and magazines I was too nervous to read. At exactly 9 o'clock, a young black woman with a professional smile called my name. "Mrs. Richardson, Mr. Mitchell will see you now." Jerome Mitchell was a tall, broad-shouldered man in his mid-50s with salt-and-pepper hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He stood when I entered and shook my hand with a firm, warm grip. "Mrs. Richardson, please have a seat. Can I get you some water? Coffee?" "No, thank you. I'm fine." He sat behind his desk and folded his hands. "Now, you mentioned on the phone that you needed legal advice regarding a family matter. Why don't you tell me what's going on?" I took a deep breath and told him everything. The birthday party, the cruise, the message from Candace about prioritizing the nuclear family. I showed him the picture I'd taken of my empty living room with all the decorations. His face grew harder with each detail. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Mrs. Richardson, I'm very sorry that happened to you. That's cruel, and it's wrong. But I need to ask, what exactly are you hoping to accomplish by coming here? Are you looking to sue them? Because emotional distress cases are difficult to prove and—" "No," I interrupted. "I'm not here to sue them. I'm here because I need to understand my options regarding my estate." His eyebrows rose slightly. "Your estate?" I reached into my purse and pulled out the document I'd found. The secret one. I slid it across the desk to him. He picked it up, adjusted his glasses, and began to read. I watched his expression change from polite interest to surprise to what looked like respect. "Mrs. Richardson," he said slowly, "do they know about this? Marcus might remember, but I doubt it. He was only 12 when it happened, and Candace has no idea. And this is current? Valid? As far as I know. Nothing's changed since it was established." He read through the document again, more carefully this time. Then he looked up at me with something new in his eyes. Not pity anymore. Respect. "Mrs. Richardson, with your permission, I'd like to make some phone calls to verify the details here. This changes everything. That's why I'm here. He smiled. A real smile this time. Then let's make sure all your legal documents are in order, starting with your will. We talked for over an hour. Jerome explained things in plain language, never talking down to me, always making sure I understood. He asked questions, he took notes, he made copies of my documents. Finally, he leaned forward. Mrs. Richardson, may I call you Dot? Please do. Dot, I'm going to be straight with you. What your daughter-in-law did was heartless. But what you have in your hands gives you leverage that most people in your situation never have. The question is, what do you want to do with that leverage? I want them to understand, I said slowly, that I am not invisible. I am not disposable. I am not just some old lady they can push aside when it's convenient. And how far are you willing to go to make that point? I thought about sitting alone in my decorated living room, about the 78 unlit candles, about Candace's message. Sometimes you have to prioritize the nuclear family. As far as it takes, I said. Jerome nodded. Then, here's what we're going to do. For the next week, while Marcus and his family enjoyed their cruise, I got my affairs in order. Jerome made phone calls. He requested documents. He had me sign papers. He updated my will. The new version looked very different from the old one. I also called my bank and had a long conversation with the manager, Mr. Peterson, who I'd known for 20 years. He was shocked when I explained what I wanted to do, but he assured me it was my money and my right. Mrs. Richardson, he said, are you absolutely sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Pastor Williams stopped by my house on Wednesday evening. I'd asked him to come, and he sat in my living room, the same living room where I'd sat alone on my birthday, drinking sweet tea and listening to my story. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Sister Dorothy, he finally said, I've known you for 30 years. You've been a faithful member of this church, a loving mother, a devoted grandmother. What Candace did was wrong, deeply wrong, but I have to ask you, and I ask this with love, are you acting out of righteousness or revenge? Is there a difference? I asked. There is. Righteousness is about justice and boundaries. Revenge is about causing pain because you're in pain. I thought about that, really thought about it. Pastor, I don't want to hurt them. I want them to see me, to understand what they did, to know that their actions have consequences. He nodded slowly. Then walk carefully, sister. The Bible says we should honor our parents, but it also says parents shouldn't provoke their children to anger. Sometimes the most righteous thing we can do is show people the truth about themselves, even when that truth is hard. That's all I want to do, I said. Show them the truth. He prayed with me before he left, not a prayer for revenge, but a prayer for wisdom, strength, and discernment. That night, Loretta came over with a casserole and a bottle of wine. I know you don't drink much, she said, but tonight, we're having one glass each, and you're going to tell me everything. So I did. I told her about Jerome, about the document, about the plans I was making. Her eyes got wider and wider. Dot, she said when I finished, you're my best friend, and I love you, but I have to ask, are you sure about this? Once you do this, you can't take it back. I know. They're going to be angry. Marcus is going to feel betrayed. Like I felt betrayed sitting alone on my birthday? She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You're right. You're absolutely right. And you know what? I'm proud of you. It takes strength to stand up for yourself, especially to family. I'm scared, I admitted. What if Marcus never speaks to me again? Then that's his choice. But Dot, you can't keep sacrificing yourself to keep other people comfortable. You've been doing that your whole life. Your mama did it. Your grandmother did it. Black women have been doing it for generations, putting everyone else first, swallowing our hurt, keeping the peace. But where does that leave us? Alone on our birthdays with unlit candles, that's where. Tears stung my eyes. When did you get so wise? I've always been this wise. You just never needed to hear it before. The cruise was scheduled to return on Friday. I spent Thursday cleaning my house from top to bottom, cooking food for the weekend, and trying to calm the butterflies in my stomach. Friday afternoon, my phone rang. Marcus. Hey, Ma, we're back. The cruise was amazing. Look, I know we messed up with your birthday. What if we all come over tomorrow for lunch? We'll celebrate then. Better late than never, right? I closed my eyes. Even now, after everything, part of me wanted to say yes, wanted to forgive and forget, wanted to pretend it never happened. But I thought about that document in my filing box, about the meetings with Jerome, about the new will sitting in his office safe. That sounds fine, Marcus. Come at noon. Great. And Ma, I'm really sorry. I should have handled things differently. Yes, I said quietly. You should have. Saturday morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. I put on a simple dress, nothing fancy, and made fried chicken, collard greens, cornbread, and mac and cheese. The same meal I'd made for the birthday party they'd missed. At exactly noon, Marcus's SUV pulled into my driveway. I watched from the window as they got out. Candace wore designer jeans and a silk blouse, looking every bit like a woman who'd just returned from a luxury vacation. Marcus looked relaxed and tan. The kids were glued to their phones. They came through my front door like nothing had happened. Grandma, Isaiah said, giving me a quick hug before heading to the living room. Aaliyah, now 16 and too cool for everything, waved. Hey, Grandma, nice dress. Marcus hugged me longer. Hey, Ma, you look good. Candace was last. She kissed my cheek, leaving a lipstick mark. Dorothy, so good to see you. I brought you something from the Bahamas. She handed me a small gift bag. Inside was a t-shirt that said, My family went to the Bahamas and all I got was this lousy t-shirt. She'd meant it as a joke. I stared at that t-shirt for a long moment, while something cold and final settled in my chest. How thoughtful, I said. Let's eat. We sat around my dining room table, the same table where I'd placed the birthday cake they never saw. I served everyone, playing the role I'd played for decades, the nurturing grandmother, the family matriarch, the one who feeds and loves and asks for nothing in return. They talked about the cruise, the pools, the shows, the food, the excursions. They showed me pictures on their phones. In every single one, they looked happy. Candace kept touching Marcus's arm, marking her territory. It was exactly what we needed, she said, looking at me with eyes that were just a little too bright, a little too challenging. Family bonding time, just the four of us. Marcus, I said, setting down my fork. Do you remember the summer you turned 12? He looked up, confused by the change in subject. Barely. Why? Do you remember what happened that summer? Something important? He frowned, thinking. That was a long time ago, Ma. Try to remember. Candace was watching me now with narrowed eyes. She sensed something, but couldn't figure out what. I don't know, Ma. We went to Six Flags. I started middle school that fall. Something else. Something involving your father and me. Something we told you was very important. I watched his face as he searched his memory. Then something flickered in his eyes. Recognition. Maybe even fear. Ma. There it is, I said softly. You do remember. Ma, that was over 30 years ago. Why are you bringing that up now? Candace's voice was sharp. Bringing what up? What are you two talking about? I stood up and went to my bedroom. When I came back, I was carrying the metal filing box. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. What's that? Candace asked. I didn't answer her. I opened the box and pulled out the document. The secret one. I placed it on the table in front of Marcus. His face went pale. "Ma, no, please don't." "Don't what?" Candace snatched the document. "What is this?" She began to read. I watched the color drain from her face, too. "This can't be real," she whispered. "It's very real," I said. "Your husband can confirm it. Can't you, Marcus?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. Candace read it again, her hands shaking. When she looked up at me, her expression was no longer challenging. It was afraid. "You own it," she said. "You own all of it." "Yes," I said simply. "But Marcus said, you told me that Bernard—" "I know what Marcus told you," I interrupted. "And I know what assumptions you made. But you never asked me directly, did you, Candace? You just assumed." The document she was holding was a property deed, but not for my little 3-bedroom house. It was for the house that Marcus and his family lived in. The 4-bedroom colonial in the nice neighborhood with the good schools. The house they'd been living in for 12 years. The house that Bernard and I had bought 40 years ago as an investment property. The house we'd rented out for years. The house we'd eventually decided to give to Marcus and his family to live in, rent-free, when they were struggling financially. But we'd never transferred the deed. The house legally belonged to me. Always had. "You let us think it was ours," Candace whispered. "You let us renovate it, paint it, landscape it." "I let you live in it," I corrected. "For free. For 12 years. Do you know how much that's worth? I could have been collecting rent, thousands of dollars a month. But I didn't, because you're family." Marcus finally found his voice. "Ma, we appreciate everything you've done, but you can't just spring this on us. Can I?" I looked at him. Really looked at him. "You can spring a cruise on me on my birthday? You can let me sit alone in a decorated house with a cake I made? You can choose a vacation over your mother without even having the decency to tell me ahead of time, but I can't remind you of the truth. That's different." "How is it different, Marcus?" Silence. Candace's voice was ice. "What do you want?" "I want," I said slowly, "for you to understand what you did. I want you to know what it feels like to have your security threatened, to feel invisible, to be treated as less important than a vacation." "So this is revenge," Candace spat. "You're threatening to evict us over a missed birthday party." "Not missed," I interrupted. "Deliberately avoided. There's a difference. We had non-refundable tickets that you booked months ago, on my birthday, deliberately." For the first time, Candace didn't have a response. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, pulling out another paper from the box. "I've updated my will. Everything I own, this house, your house, my savings, my life insurance, was going to Marcus. All of it." "Was?" Marcus's voice cracked. "Was. Past tense. My new will is very different. Jerome Mitchell has it in his office safe. Signed and witnessed and legal." "Who's Jerome Mitchell?" Candace demanded. "My lawyer." The room was so quiet, I could hear the kitchen clock ticking. "Ma," Marcus said, and his voice sounded younger suddenly, like the boy he used to be. "What did you do?" "I protected myself," I said. "Something I should have done a long time ago." Aaliyah spoke up for the first time. "Grandma, are you saying we have to move?" I looked at my granddaughter, who was looking at me with confusion and hurt in her eyes. My heart squeezed. "No, baby, you don't have to move. Not unless your parents force my hand." "What does that mean?" Isaiah asked. Candace stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "This is manipulation. Emotional blackmail. You're a bitter old woman who can't stand to see us happy." "Candace." My voice cut through her tirade like a knife. "You took my son and grandchildren on a cruise on my birthday. You sent me a text about prioritizing the nuclear family. You gave me a joke t-shirt about being left behind. And now you want to call me bitter?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. "I loved you like a daughter," I said quietly. I welcomed you into this family. I babysat your children. I gave you money when you needed it. I let you live in my house for free. And this is how you repay me? We didn't mean, Marcus started. Yes, you did. That's the part that hurts most, Marcus. You knew. Candace told you about the cruise a week before my birthday, and you chose not to tell me. You chose to let me plan, and cook and hope, knowing nobody would come. That's not a mistake, that's a choice. The kids were both staring at their father now. Dad? Aaliyah's voice was small. Is that true? You knew? Marcus looked at his daughter, then at me, then at the table. He didn't answer. That silence was more damning than any confession. I think, I said, standing up, that we're done here. Ma, wait! Marcus reached for me. I stepped back. No. I'm done waiting. I'm done being patient and understanding and forgiving while you all take me for granted. I'm 78 years old, Marcus. I don't have time to waste on people who don't value me. So what now? Candace's voice was bitter. You're going to kick us out? Make your own grandchildren homeless? That's up to you, I said calmly. You have two choices. Choice 1, we sit down with Jerome Mitchell and work out an arrangement. You start paying fair market rent for the house you live in, not full market rate. I'm not cruel, but something reasonable, something that shows respect. And choice 2? Marcus asked quietly. Choice 2, you continue to treat me like I'm disposable, and I sell the house to someone else. There are plenty of people looking for a nice 4-bedroom colonial in a good school district. Jerome says I could get at least $400,000 for it, maybe more. Candace laughed, a harsh, disbelieving sound. You wouldn't. You wouldn't do that to your own grandchildren. I met her eyes. Try me. The thing was, she could see I meant it. They all could. This is insane, Candace said. Marcus, say something. Tell your mother she's being insane. But Marcus was looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Shock? Respect? Fear? Maybe all three. She's not being insane, he said quietly. She's being smart. Smarter than I gave her credit for. Marcus! It's true, isn't it, Ma? We've been taking you for granted, living in your house rent-free, treating it like it's ours, and then pulling something like this birthday thing. You have every right to be angry. I'm not just angry, I said. I'm done. Done being the pushover grandmother. Done being convenient when you need something and invisible when you don't. Aaliyah was crying now, quietly. Isaiah looked shocked and confused. My heart ached for them, but I stood firm. I want you all to leave now, I said. Think about what I've said. You have until the end of the month to decide. Jerome will send you the paperwork for option 1. If you don't sign it, we'll proceed with option 2. The end of the month? That's only 2 weeks, Candace protested. You had no problem giving me 1 day's notice about missing my birthday, I said. 2 weeks is generous. They left in a storm of silence and slammed doors. Through my window, I watched them get into their SUV. Candace was yelling. I could see her mouth moving, her hands gesturing wildly. Marcus sat with his hands on the steering wheel, not moving. The kids were both looking at their phones. Then, they were gone. I stood in my suddenly empty house, surrounded by the dishes from lunch, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt powerful. My phone started ringing almost immediately. Marcus, then Candace, then Marcus again. I didn't answer. Instead, I called Jerome. It's done, I told him. They know. How did they take it? About as well as you'd expect. Candace is furious. Marcus is in shock, but they understand now. They understand that I'm not someone they can push around. Good, he said. Now the real work begins. They'll probably try to fight this, you know. Claim you're being coerced or you're not of sound mind. Let them try, I said. I've got 30 neighbors who'll testify that I'm sharp as a tack. I've got Pastor Williams. I've got you. And most importantly, I've got the truth on my side. That you do, Mrs. Richardson. That you do. That night, I couldn't sleep again. But this time, it wasn't from hurt. It was from adrenaline. Around midnight, I got a text from Aaliyah. Grandma, I didn't know about the cruise until the day before. Mom said it was a surprise. I wanted to come to your birthday. I'm sorry. Please don't be mad at me and Isaiah. We love you. My heart squeezed. I texted back immediately. Baby girl, I'm not mad at you or your brother. Your children. This is between me and your parents. I love you both so much. That will never change. Her response came quickly. Then why are you doing this? I thought for a long time before answering. Because sometimes love means setting boundaries. Sometimes love means teaching people how to treat you. And sometimes love means standing up for yourself, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I don't understand. You will one day. When you're older and you have people in your life who take you for granted, you'll remember this. And you'll know that you deserve to be treated with respect. Promise me you'll remember that. I promise. Good. Now go to bed. School tomorrow. Okay. Love you, Grandma. Love you too, baby. I fell asleep after that. My phone clutched in my hand, and for the first time since my birthday, I slept soundly. The next week was chaos. Marcus called every day. Candace sent angry text messages that I deleted without reading. Jerome said they'd contacted their own lawyer, some young man fresh out of law school who tried to sound tough but clearly didn't have a case. The deed is ironclad, Jerome told me on Wednesday, and the arrangement they had was informal, nothing in writing. They don't have a leg to stand on legally. The question is whether they're going to accept option 1 or force you to go with option 2. What do you think they'll do? Honestly, I think Candace wants to fight. But Marcus knows better. He knows that if you sell that house out from under them, they'll have to find somewhere else to live. And they won't find anything nearly as nice in their price range. He was right. By Friday, Marcus called and asked if he could meet with me. Just him, without Candace. Please, Ma, I need to talk to you. Face to face. Against my better judgment, I agreed. He came to my house on Saturday afternoon, alone. He looked like he hadn't slept much. There were dark circles under his eyes, and he'd lost the tan glow from the cruise. We sat in my living room, the same room where I'd sat alone on my birthday, and looked at each other across a gulf that seemed impossibly wide. Ma, he finally said, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. For what, specifically? He flinched at my tone. For everything. For the cruise. For not telling you. For letting you sit here alone on your birthday. For taking you for granted. For choosing Candace over you. That's the part that hurts most, I said quietly. I raised you, Marcus. When your father died, I worked 2 jobs to make sure you had everything you needed. I sacrificed everything for you, and when it came down to it, you chose your wife over your mother. She's my wife, Ma. I have to... You have to what? Let her treat your mother like garbage? Let her plan deliberately hurtful things? When did you become the kind of man who lets a woman turn him against his own mother? His face crumpled. You're right. I should have stood up to her. I should have told her the cruise was a bad idea. I should have canceled it. But Ma, you don't understand what it's like. She can be difficult. When she doesn't get her way, she makes everyone miserable. So you sacrifice me to keep her happy? I didn't mean it wasn't supposed to be like that. But that's what it was, I said. You chose peace with her over respect for me. And Marcus, that tells me everything I need to know about where I stand in your life. We sat in silence for a long moment. What do you want me to do? He finally asked. I want you to be the man your father raised you to be. The man who stands up for what's right, even when it's hard. The man who honors his mother. If I sign that rental agreement, Candace is going to lose it. Then maybe Candace needs to lose it, I said bluntly. Maybe she needs to understand that actions have consequences, that she can't treat people badly and expect no repercussions. You really hate her, don't you? I don't hate her, Marcus. I pity her. Because she's so busy trying to control everything and everyone that she doesn't understand what real family means. Real family doesn't play these kinds of games. Real family doesn't deliberately hurt each other. He was crying now, silently, tears running down his face. My son, my baby boy, the child I'd raised to be better than this. I'll sign the agreement, he whispered. I'll pay the rent. Just please, Ma, don't sell the house. The kids love it there. It's the only home they've ever known. Then you better make sure Candace signs too, I said. Because if she doesn't, the offer is off the table. He nodded, wiping his eyes. And Marcus, one more thing. Yeah? From now on, you come see me regularly. Not just when you need something. Not just on holidays. Every week, you and the kids. Without Candace, if necessary. Because I'm not going to spend whatever years I have left begging for scraps of attention from my own son. Okay, Ma, I promise. Don't promise. Do it. He left looking older than when he'd arrived, and I felt no satisfaction from it. Just sadness. Sadness that it had come to this. That love and family hadn't been enough. That I'd had to threaten them to get basic respect. The rental agreement arrived at Jerome's office the following Wednesday, signed by both Marcus and Candace. The rent they'd be paying was reasonable, about 60% of market rate, but it was something. More importantly, it was a boundary, a line in the sand. I signed it too, and just like that, our relationship was forever changed. But something else had changed too. The ladies at church had heard what happened. Loretta had told them, with my permission, and suddenly I was surrounded by support I didn't know I needed. Sister Patterson brought me a casserole and told me about the time she'd had to set boundaries with her own daughter-in-law. Sister Green called me strong and brave. Even Brother Thomas, who usually stayed out of women's business, shook my hand after service and said, "About time someone stood up to these entitled young people." Pastor Williams pulled me aside. "Sister Dorothy, I've been watching you. You're different now. Stronger." "I don't feel stronger," I admitted. "I feel tired." "Strength isn't about how you feel," he said. "It's about what you do despite how you feel. You drew a line. You protected yourself. That takes courage." But the biggest surprise came 2 weeks later, when Aaliyah showed up at my door alone. "Mom doesn't know I'm here," she said. "She thinks I'm at my friend Taylor's house. Can I come in?" "Of course, baby." We sat at my kitchen table, and she looked at me with Bernard's eyes, my late husband's eyes, passed down through Marcus to his daughter. "I need to tell you something, Grandma, about the cruise." My heart started beating faster. "What about it?" "Mom didn't plan it months ago. That was a lie." I went very still. "What?" "She booked it 3 weeks ago, right after you sent the birthday invitations. I saw the confirmation email in her inbox when I borrowed her laptop for homework." The room seemed to tilt. "Aaliyah, are you sure?" "Positive. And there's more. She said to Dad that she wanted to teach you a lesson about being too needy. She said you were always calling and texting and expecting them to visit. And she was tired of you being so demanding." I closed my eyes, absorbing this new betrayal. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because it's not right. You're not demanding, Grandma. You just wanted to celebrate your birthday with us, and Mom deliberately made sure we'd miss it. That's cruel. And when Dad tried to object, she said if he didn't support her, she'd make his life hell." There it was, the truth I'd suspected but hadn't wanted to believe. "Does your father know you're here?" "No, but Grandma? I'm glad you did what you did. Mom needs to know she can't treat people that way, Even Dad's been different since it happened, like he finally woke up. I reached across the table and took my granddaughter's hand. Thank you for telling me, baby. That took courage. Will you use it? In court or something? There won't be any court case. They signed the rental agreement. But they don't know that you know the truth, that Mom lied about when she booked it. She was right. And suddenly, I had leverage I hadn't expected. After Aaliyah left, I called Jerome. We need to meet, I said. I just learned something important. What is it? Candace lied about everything. His voice sharpened with interest. Tell me everything. And as I told him what Aaliyah had revealed, I realized something. This wasn't over. Not even close. Jerome Mitchell's office had become familiar territory over the past month. But this time, when I sat across from his desk, I wasn't the hurt, uncertain woman who'd first walked through his door. I was someone different now. Someone who knew her worth. So Candace deliberately booked the cruise after receiving your birthday invitation, Jerome said, reviewing his notes. And she specifically told Marcus she wanted to teach you a lesson about being too needy. That's what Aaliyah heard. Would Aaliyah be willing to testify to that if necessary? I thought about my granddaughter's brave face, her decision to come to me with the truth. I don't want to put her in that position. She's 16. She shouldn't have to choose between her mother and her grandmother. I understand. But Dot, this information changes things. They signed the rental agreement under the premise that this was all a misunderstanding, a scheduling conflict. If we can prove it was deliberate, premeditated cruelty, what would that accomplish? I interrupted. Making them pay more rent? Getting them evicted? Jerome, I don't want revenge. I want peace. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. Then what do you want? I want the truth acknowledged. I want a real apology, not just words, but changed behavior. And I want to make sure this never happens again, not to me and not to anyone else Candace decides to target. That's a tall order. I know, but I also know that Candace only responds to one thing: consequences. She needs to understand that her actions don't just hurt people's feelings. They have real, lasting repercussions. Jerome smiled. You know what? I think I have an idea. Over the next week, Jerome worked on something he called an insurance policy. He wouldn't tell me all the details, just said to trust him and be ready for a family meeting the following Saturday. All of them? I asked. Candace too? Especially Candace. That week crawled by. Marcus came to visit twice, as promised, bringing the kids both times, without Candace. He helped me fix a loose board on my porch. Aaliyah helped me plant flowers in my front garden. Isaiah taught me how to use some new features on my phone. It was almost like old times. Almost. But there was still a tension underneath everything, a crack that hadn't fully healed. On Friday evening, Loretta came over with her famous peach cobbler. Big day tomorrow, she said, settling into my kitchen chair like she'd done 1,000 times before. How you feeling? Nervous, scared, determined. That's a powerful combination. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Dot, I've watched you transform over these past weeks. You know what the difference is? What? You stopped apologizing for taking up space. You stopped making yourself small to make other people comfortable. You remembered that you matter. Tears pricked my eyes. It shouldn't have taken them hurting me like this for me to remember that. Maybe not. But sometimes God uses our pain to wake us up to truths we've been sleeping on. Your mama raised you to be accommodating, to be the peacemaker, to sacrifice yourself for family. That's beautiful in a lot of ways, but it also taught you that your needs don't matter as much as everyone else's. Mama did the best she could. I know she did. And you did the best you could with what she taught you. But baby, it's time to break that cycle. Not just for you, but for Aaliyah. So she grows up knowing that Black women don't have to sacrifice themselves to be loved. that we can set boundaries and still be good people. I thought about that all night, about cycles and patterns, about all the Black women in my family who'd swallowed their hurt and kept the peace, about Aaliyah watching me, learning from me. Saturday morning arrived bright and clear. I wore my favorite dress, a deep burgundy that Bernard always said brought out the warmth in my skin. I did my hair, put on my pearls, and looked at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was 78 years old, with lines earned from years of smiling and crying and living. But her eyes were clear. Her spine was straight. She looked like someone who knew exactly who she was and what she was worth. At 10 o'clock they arrived. Marcus, Candace, and the kids. Jerome was already there, having arrived 30 minutes early to set up. We gathered in my living room, the same room where this had all begun, where I'd sat alone on my birthday. The same room where I'd confronted them with the truth about the house. Candace sat stiffly on my couch, her designer purse clutched in her lap like armor. Marcus sat beside her, looking uncomfortable. The kids sat in the chairs by the window, quiet and watchful. Jerome stood by the fireplace, a folder of documents in his hands. I sat in my armchair, Bernard's old chair, and felt his presence somehow, supporting me. "Thank you all for coming," Jerome began. "Mrs. Richardson has asked me to facilitate this meeting because there are some things that need to be said and some decisions that need to be made." "We already signed the rental agreement," Candace said sharply. "What more do you want?" "What I want," I said quietly, "is the truth. We've already—" "You lied, Candace." The room went silent. "You told Marcus you booked the cruise months ago. You told him the tickets were non-refundable and that you'd made an innocent mistake with the dates. But that wasn't true, was it?" Her face went pale, then red. "I don't know what you're talking about. You booked the cruise 3 weeks ago, right after you received my birthday invitation. You did it deliberately." Marcus turned to stare at his wife. "Candace? That's ridiculous. Who told you?" "It doesn't matter who told me. What matters is that it's true, and you know it's true." Candace stood up abruptly. "I don't have to sit here and be accused." "Yes," Jerome said firmly. "You do. Sit down, Mrs. Richardson." Something in his tone made her sit. Maybe it was the authority in his voice. Maybe it was the folder of documents in his hands. Maybe it was the fact that she was sitting in a house that belonged to me, not her. "Here's what's going to happen," Jerome continued. "You're going to listen. You're going to listen to how your actions affected Mrs. Richardson. You're going to acknowledge what you did, and then we're going to discuss how to move forward." "And if I don't?" Candace challenged. Jerome opened the folder and pulled out a document. "Then I'll file these papers with the court on Monday morning. It's an eviction notice. Mrs. Richardson has grounds to terminate the rental agreement if it can be proven that you entered into it under fraudulent circumstances." "Fraudulent? We didn't commit fraud." "You lied about the circumstances that led to missing her birthday. You claimed it was an innocent mistake when it was actually premeditated cruelty. That could be considered fraud, especially given that the rental agreement was signed as a way to make amends for that supposed mistake." Candace looked at Marcus. "Do something!" But Marcus was looking at me with an expression of dawning horror. "Ma, is this true? Did Candace really book the cruise after getting your invitation?" "Yes." "And you knew? When we signed the rental agreement?" "I found out after you signed. But yes, I know now." He turned to his wife. "Candace, tell me the truth. Did you do this on purpose?" The silence stretched out like taffy. "Answer him," I said softly. Candace's face crumpled, but there was anger underneath the tears. "Fine. Yes, I booked it after we got your invitation. Are you happy now?" Aaliyah gasped. Isaiah's mouth dropped open. "Why?" Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. "Why would you do that?" "Because I'm tired," Candace exploded. I'm tired of your mother always needing something, always calling, always expecting us to drop everything for her. I'm tired of her guilt trips and her expectations and her constant presence in our lives. I wanted one vacation. One. Where it was just our family, without worrying about what your mother needed or wanted or felt. So you chose my birthday, I said calmly. You could have taken your vacation any other week of the year, but you specifically chose my birthday. Yes, because I wanted you to understand that you're not the center of our universe, that we have our own lives and our own priorities, and sometimes those priorities don't include you. The words hung in the air like poison. Mom. Aaliyah's voice was thick with tears. How could you say that? It's the truth, Aaliyah, and you'll understand when you're older and you have in-laws who don't understand boundaries. Boundaries? I stood up, my voice stronger than I felt. Candace, I've respected your boundaries. When you asked me to call before coming over, I did. When you said you needed family time, I gave you space. When you wanted to make decisions about the kids without my input, I stepped back. I have done nothing but try to be respectful of your marriage and your family. You call every other day. I call once a week to check in. That's not unreasonable for a mother calling her son. You expect us at every Sunday dinner? I invite you, I don't demand, and you say no more often than you say yes. Candace opened her mouth, then closed it. Here's what I think, I continued. I think you resent me not because I'm overbearing, but because I exist. Because I'm a reminder to Marcus that he had a life before you. Because I'm someone he loves who isn't you. And you can't stand that. That's not... It is. And if you'd just been honest about that, we could have worked something out. But instead you went out of your way to hurt me. You planned something deliberately cruel, and then you lied about it. Marcus stood up, and for the first time since this whole thing started, he looked angry. Really angry. Candace, what have you done? Don't you dare take her side. You made me lie to my mother. You made me complicit in deliberately hurting her. On her birthday. I didn't make you do anything, Aisha. You told me you'd make my life hell if I didn't go along with it. Aaliyah told me what she heard. Candace spun to face her daughter. You went behind my back? You were wrong, Mom. Aaliyah was crying now. You were so wrong, and you won't even admit it. Isaiah spoke up for the first time. Grandma didn't deserve that. She's always been nice to us. Yeah, and you don't see it because you're kids, but she's manipulative and controlling. Stop. Marcus's voice cut through Candace's words like a knife. Just stop. I've been listening to you poison my relationship with my mother for years, and I let you because it was easier than fighting with you. But I'm done. I'm done choosing peace with you over respect for my mother. I'm done letting you make me into someone I'm ashamed of. Marcus. Do you know what I've been thinking about this past month? I've been thinking about what kind of man I've become. Dad would be ashamed of me. He'd be ashamed that I let my wife treat his wife, the woman who raised me, like garbage. He'd be ashamed that I chose a vacation over my mother's birthday. Your father's been dead for 20 years, and my mother is still here. Still alive, still loving me, still willing to forgive me even after what we did. Do you understand how rare that is? How precious? Candace was crying now, mascara running down her face. So what? You're going to divorce me? Choose your mother over your wife? I'm going to choose being a decent human being. And if you can't support that, then we have bigger problems than I thought. Jerome cleared his throat. I think we need to refocus. Mrs. Richardson didn't call this meeting to break up your marriage. She called it to establish some ground rules moving forward. I nodded. Candace, I don't want to evict you. I don't want the kids to have to move and change schools. But I will not continue to be disrespected in my own family. What do you want? Marcus asked quietly. I want family therapy. All of us. You, me, Candace, and a professional mediator. We need to work through this with someone who can help us communicate better. I'm not going to therapy, Candace started. Then you can start packing, I said simply. Because those are the terms. Therapy or eviction. Your choice. Jerome pulled out another document. Additionally, the rental agreement is being amended. There's now a clause stating that if you miss major family events, birthdays, holidays, etc., without legitimate emergency reasons, the rent increases by 10% for that year. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious, I said. You want to treat family like a business transaction? Fine. Let's make it a business transaction with clear consequences. Marcus was nodding slowly. That's fair, Ma. That's more than fair. And one more thing, I said. I'm putting the house in a trust. Jerome has drawn up the papers. When I die, the house doesn't automatically go to you, Marcus. It goes into the trust, and the trustee, Pastor Williams, will determine whether you've earned the right to inherit it based on how you've treated me in my final years. Ma, you don't have to. Yes, I do, because I need to know that I'm valued for more than what I can leave you when I'm gone. I need to know that you love me, not my assets. Candace laughed bitterly. This is all about money and control. No, I said firmly. This is about respect. Something you clearly don't understand. We sat in silence for a long moment. Then Aaliyah stood up and walked over to me. She wrapped her arms around me and whispered, I'm sorry, Grandma. I love you. Isaiah followed, hugging me from the other side. And then Marcus, my son, my baby. He knelt in front of my chair and took my hands. Ma, I'm so sorry. For all of it. You deserved better. You deserved so much better. And if you give me another chance, I promise, I'll do better. Don't promise, I said, echoing what I'd told him weeks ago. Just do it. I will. We looked at Candace, still sitting on the couch, alone. Well, I asked her, what's it going to be? She wiped her eyes, smearing her mascara even more. When she spoke, her voice was small, defeated. I'll go to therapy. And I'm sorry. I was cruel. I was wrong. I let my own issues make me hurt you, and that wasn't okay. It wasn't the apology I deserved. It wasn't enough. But it was a start. We'll see, I said. Therapy starts next week. Jerome has a list of family counselors who specialize in multi-generational conflicts. Jerome handed Marcus a business card. Dr. Patricia Okonkwo. She comes highly recommended. Her office will be in touch to set up the first session. After they left, subdued and quiet, Jerome and I sat in my living room. You did good today, he said. Did I? Or did I just force them into something they'll resent? Time will tell. But you set boundaries. You demanded respect. That's not something to apologize for. After Jerome left, I sat alone in my living room. But this time, the aloneness felt different. Not lonely. Peaceful. My phone rang. Loretta. How'd it go? It went, I said, and told her everything. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then, Dot, I'm proud of you. You know that, right? I know. You want me to come over? We can watch one of your stories and eat ice cream. Actually, I think I just want to sit here for a bit. Be with myself. Okay, honey, but I'm here if you need me. I know. Thank you. The therapy sessions started the following Wednesday. Dr. Okonkwo was a striking woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She didn't let anyone, especially Candace, get away with deflection or blame shifting. You hurt your mother-in-law deliberately, she said in our third session. That's the fact we're working from. Now the question is, why? Over the weeks, the truth came out slowly, painfully. Candace's own mother had been controlling and critical. Candace had spent her whole life trying to break free from that relationship, and she'd projected all of that onto me. Every phone call, every invitation, every attempt to be involved in my grandchildren's lives. She'd seen it as an attempt to control her, to criticize her, to undermine her. "But I never criticized you," I said in one session. "I know," Candace admitted. "Or at least, my rational mind knows. But my emotional mind couldn't separate you from my mother. And instead of dealing with that, I tried to push you away. It didn't excuse what she'd done. But it explained it. Marcus had his own work to do. He'd spent so much energy trying to keep peace between his wife and his mother that he'd lost himself somewhere in the middle. He'd become a people-pleaser, afraid to stand up to Candace, afraid to disappoint me, afraid to rock the boat. "But sometimes," Dr. Okonkwo told him, "the boat needs to be rocked. Sometimes peace isn't worth the price you pay for it." And me? I had to face the fact that I'd enabled some of this by being too accommodating, too forgiving, too willing to accept crumbs of attention and call it enough. "You taught your son that you didn't require respect," Dr. Okonkwo said gently. "Not intentionally, but through your actions. Every time you accepted less than you deserved, you reinforced the idea that your needs weren't important." "But I was just trying to be a good mother." "You can be a good mother and still require respect. In fact, requiring respect models healthy boundaries for your son and grandchildren. You're not doing them any favors by being a doormat." The words stung, but they were true. 3 months into therapy, something shifted. We were in Dr. Okonkwo's office, all 5 of us because the kids had started attending some sessions, when Candace did something unexpected. She looked at me and said, "Dorothy, I need to tell you something." "Okay." "I've been angry at you for years, but the truth is, I wasn't angry at you. I was angry at myself. I was jealous of the relationship you had with Marcus and the kids. I was jealous that they loved you so easily when I had to work so hard to earn their love every single day. And I was terrified that if they loved you too much, there wouldn't be enough love left for me." She was crying now, really crying. "But that's not how love works. I see that now. Love doesn't run out. The kids loving you doesn't mean they love me less. Marcus loving you doesn't mean he loves me less. I was so scared of losing them that I tried to cut you out entirely." I reached across the space between us and took her hand. "Candace, I never wanted to take them from you. I just wanted to be part of their lives." "I know. And I'm sorry I made that so hard. It wasn't a perfect moment. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. But it was real. And it was honest. And it was a beginning." 6 months after my 78th birthday, we had another party. This time, everyone came. Marcus brought flowers. Candace brought a homemade cake. It was lopsided and the frosting was messy, but she'd made it herself instead of buying one. The kids brought cards they'd made. Loretta came. Pastor Williams came. Sister Patterson and Sister Green and Brother Thomas came. Jerome Mitchell came with his wife. My small house was full of people and laughter and love. When it was time to blow out the candles, I looked around at all the faces watching me. My son, working on becoming the man his father had been. My daughter-in-law, learning to open her heart instead of closing it. My grandchildren, learning what healthy family relationships looked like. My friends who'd supported me through the darkest time. I made a wish, not for revenge or justice or vindication. I wished for continued healing, for wisdom, for grace, and for the strength to keep being the woman I'd become, someone who knew her worth and wasn't afraid to demand it. I blew out the candles, only 7 this time to represent my age, and everyone cheered. Later, after most people had left, I sat on my porch with Loretta, watching the sunset. "You did it," she said. "You got your family back." "I got myself back," I corrected. "The family was just a bonus." She laughed. "Look at you, all wise and everything." "I'm 78 years old. It's about time I got wise." "Better late than never." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the neighborhood kids play basketball in the street, listening to someone's music drifting from an open window. Dot? Yeah? What was the hardest part of all of this? I thought about it. Accepting that standing up for myself might mean losing them. Being willing to be alone rather than be disrespected. That was the hardest part. And now? Now I know I'm not alone. Even if they'd walked away, I would have had me. And that's enough. My phone buzzed. A text from Aaliyah. Grandma, thank you for today. Thank you for fighting for yourself and for us. You taught me something important. That loving yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. Love you. I showed the text to Loretta. See, she said. You're changing the pattern. Aaliyah won't grow up thinking she has to sacrifice herself to be loved. That's your real legacy right there. That night, as I got ready for bed, I looked at myself in the mirror again. The same 78-year-old face, the same lines and wrinkles, but different eyes, stronger eyes. Eyes that had seen betrayal and chosen dignity. Eyes that had been hurt and chosen healing. I thought about that day 6 months ago, sitting alone with unlit candles and uneaten cake. About the woman I'd been then, hurt, confused, diminished. And I thought about the woman I was now, whole, clear, empowered. It had taken 78 years, but I'd finally learned the most important lesson of all. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't love others well if you don't love yourself first. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is set a boundary, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. I climbed into bed and said a prayer of gratitude. For the pain that had woken me up. For the strength to fight back. For the grace to forgive. For the wisdom to know the difference between reconciliation and returning to how things were. Because we weren't going back to how things were. We were building something new, something better, something built on mutual respect instead of one-sided sacrifice. And as I drifted off to sleep, I smiled. Because at 78 years old, Dorothy Richardson had finally learned how to fly. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.